know, this is a sesquicentennial episode of the Scottish Independence podcast, or rather it's number 150, but with all the different little shows and spin-offs and one-episode specials, it's actually about the 250th, so either way it's kind of an anniversary. And in this episode we're back to the interviews. Pat Kane, who I'm sure doesn't need much introduction, joined me from Buchanan Street Shopping Centre, so there's a little bit of background noise, but everything's perfectly audible. As ever when you speak to Pat, there's plenty to think about, so I'll let you listen to it right away, and I'll have a wee word with you at the end. Hi Pat, how's it going?
It's going very well. It's a demanding time, so I'm just trying to kind of crank the machinery back up into some kind of working order.
Yeah, I'm always a bit worried about recording an interview in these kind of moments of what the hell's going on, and that's it seems to be like one of these moments, because it's that thing where, like, whatever we say today, tomorrow's probably horribly out of date, so we're in choppy waters here.
It is. Things have accelerated. Four-dimensional chess players are starting to get into their B game, if not their A game, and us poor citizens, never mind pundit or commentariat, are probably, unless we had a bug on the inside of the Sturgeon and the May bunkers, we're only going to be several steps behind what's going on. But, for the sake of sanity, try working it out at least, because otherwise you would feel like a very passive citizen indeed.
Yeah, so that's the first question. Where do you think we're at now? Because Sturgeon said she wants the referendum. She said it as First Minister, not as leader of the SNP, which was interesting. She didn't say it at the conference. She said it in Butte House, which I thought was an important thing. But then May's coming out and not saying specifically that she's going to block it, but delay or block, or I'm not sure that there hasn't been some weasel words here, with still leaving wiggle room. I don't think anything's quite locked in. I don't know about you.
Well, it's incredibly difficult to pick through what the scenarios are that stretch out from these two moves. I think we were expecting, and I'm still expecting, that the May government has a deep reservoir of pragmatism in relation to the various challenges it faces over Brexit. Before we even get to the constitutional question, I can't understand why British information age capitalism isn't implacably opposed to every move of this. Everything that the Brexiteers do would seem to kind of challenge the basic integrity of big capital in terms of the way that it relies on talent and freedom of movement and freedom of borders and all the rest of it. So that still perplexes me. I still think there's going to be some surprises in terms of the whole hard-soft Brexit dichotomy coming down the turnpike. And I also can't quite believe that there will not be some kind of pragmatic turn in relationship to the Scottish offer, the differentiated Brexit offer that Sturgeon made a few months ago, simply because, effectively it's the kind of next step to a kind of British federalism, if she half accepted it, that we all expect is going to be the ultimate sane solution to governance on these islands. In any case, as ever, Scotland's sort of leading ahead on that, but I simply can't believe that they would act so destructively not in their self-interest as to either not try to engineer at least a mediocre Brexit and not try to allow a certain level of governmental federalism, which is the kind of the consequence of the differentiated offer made by Sturgeon. I'm still scratching my head as to think they won't pull that out of the bag in about 12 months' time.
Maybe I'm a bit more cynical than you, but I gave up waiting for sanity from the British government a long time ago.
I understand that position.
But then we've had Boris Johnson swinging into... I've not actually managed to find the clip yet, but we had Boris Johnson coming in to save the day with the solution for everything. We don't need federal Britain, we need a new royal yacht. We'll be fine.
No, it's true. There's an element of... I think the element of this that has to be noted, and I think people who are sort of left nationalists or independistas have to kind of keep pinching themselves about this, is that it really is that the Brexiteers really learned from the 2014 playbook to this degree. They got the England and Wales over the line with a sulphurous touch of anti-immigration populism, but at least as equally large a part of the case was the kind of arguments about self-determination, self-rule, sovereignty, returning of power to the people that they learned from some of the parts of the 2014 Yes campaign playbook. I think it also looks like very, very smart, book smart, politics, philosophy and economics smart people who believe that they have this kind of bold new idea or bold clear idea about British sovereignty that they're going to run through in this kind of radical way in the way that Thatcher was radical in her own way, and in the way that the Bannon crew are radical and the alt-right are radical in the Trump administration. I think we're looking at power elites that have become seized of what they think is an absolutely clear, detailed, burning away idea, something that will just, bypass the experts, bypass the establishment, and go straight from a buccaneering elite to a waiting ready people. So I think that part of the instability of this situation is I think there are people who are in the grip of what they think is a fabulous, shining new idea. And when people are in the grip of a fabulous, shining new idea, and they have power and they have the kind of arrogance, the kind of cultural arrogance and hauteur that's built up from being a part of the British political, Westminster political establishment, I think a lot of chaos is consequent. And I think we're in genuinely chaotic times. And, the very one thing that you can say about Sturgeon is she's really good at stable consistency. And, as things melt down around about us, I think her long-term advantage in this is that she will be saying, I have steered very straight, I have steered very clear on a certain course. And that will actually become, I think, a continuity to be valued by Scottish citizens who are as battered about by the Times as anybody else, the more the years and the months go by.
Yeah, she has been remarkably consistent throughout the entire process, but some of the things that come out from Westminster, as you say, it seems sort of random, or is it some of them just batshit, like Boris's royal yacht? What did you make of this Empire 2.0 thing? I mean, it's not like the people who were subjugated by the British Empire have quite as favourable a view of it as some people in certain parts of Westminster do.
No, it reminds me, as I'm saying, it reminds me of kind of policy wonkery gone mad. I mean, the key person at the core of all this, I mean, whether he's pulling the levers directly or whether he's just a kind of intellectual consigliere to the whole process, is a guy called Dominic Cummings, who tweets under the handle Odyssean Project. And he was the guy at the heart of the Leave campaign who came up with the phrase "take back control," which is one of which cuts through all the previous discussions that have been saying. A brilliantly philosophical phrase, captures so much of the spirit of the era, and he is one of the scariest minds you've ever encountered. I mean, he's a complete Professor Brainstorm. He's as interested in artificial intelligence as he is in gutting Whitehall. So there is a kind of swivel-eyed, Hayekian, anti-big government, pro-market, pro-creative destruction intelligentsia at the heart of the Brexit project that is up for taking really destructive risks because they believe that something is going to be created out of that chaos. I mean, Naomi Klein was talking about it a while ago. She talked about the shock doctrine or disaster capitalism, and the very idea, the point is that you shake up things to such a degree that you then profit from them by being clever or populist or identifying the right, what you think is the right or the wrong enemies after you've created the same chaos that you can profit from in terms of establishing stable governance. So I think we're looking at on both sides of the Atlantic. I think we're looking at powerful people in the grip of semi-utopian ideas, and I think we're suffering through the consequences of that. And Boaty McBoatface or Windsor McWindsorface, is just one tiny small emanation of how nuts, but not nuts as in batshit nuts, but nuts as in possessed with an ideological and an intellectual fervour and consistency that should indeed scare the shit out of us all.
Yeah, in a certain way, like the things like the new royal yacht and so on, it's how it manifests itself when they get over euphoric. But,
yes, exactly.
But one of the interesting factors about what you're saying here is how successfully people like Trump, where it was basically a corporate takeover of America, and some of the other groups that are involved in Brexit and stuff, even though there's other kind of corporate side that would be pro-EU, is how they managed to portray themselves as the plucky underdog in all of this. Whereas, there's serious power and serious money behind them all, but they still sort of portray themselves as it's all for the working man and the public, whereas it's actually a very small cabal.
I think it's really weird. There's a lot of weirdness going around in terms of trying to figure out what a political identity is and what a collective political identity is and who it responds to. I find it very, very strange. I mean, one is tempted to say in the English context or the English and Welsh context in terms of the majority that voted for Brexit, to some degree it was a vote to say that we, the left behind, in the broken mill towns between the big cities of Britain exist. So that's one way to think about it. But I think another way to think about it, which I think Ruth Davidson is really, really trying to tap into in terms of aversion to a second referendum, is something that sociologists have looked at for quite a few decades, which is a kind of growing nihilism and cynicism about representative politics itself. Leave us alone. Don't bother us. You're putting too many demands on us. Let us get on with our lives. Bugger off. Leave us alone. And I think there's an element of let these elites, clearly shape our lives. Let them clearly take us in a direction, because the times are so incredibly confusing, and I don't have the energy to be a proper citizen anyway. I think there's enough juice in the tank of Scottish sort of civic nationhood built up over the last few decades and sort of accelerated since the last referendum campaign began in 2012 to resist that general sort of cynicism and nullity of modern times. But I think that really works in the Brexit south of the border Brexit context and with Trump as well. But let's not forget 38% of Scots, 38% did vote to leave, and they would have voted to leave on the basis of some element of anti-immigration, but also some element of not liking the way that the EU has either performed or been rendered, or a combination of both over the last 5 to 10 Farageist years. We do have a UKIP MEP. Hundreds of thousands of people did vote for UKIP in Scotland. Not much, but not invisible and not non-existent. So I think we have enough juice in the tank from what we have all been working on in Scottish constitutional and cultural politics to defy that spirit of the age. But I think the spirit of the age in terms of the relationship between the elites and the masses is very odd and quite impenetrable. And I wouldn't immediately go to the pre-fascist, neo-fascist moment. However, I do worry if the economic dislocation and disruption that is the end point of both Brexit and Trumpism seeps down into these communities. There's a few demagogues waiting to come along. Aaron Banks has just launched his Patriotic Alliance project, which has modelled itself on what would seem to be a combination of the Five Star Movement in Italy and Oswald Mosley. So it's not as if the times aren't dangerous, but I more and more value what we've built up in Scotland, both as a parliament and as a movement and as a culture. I think we're quite anomalous, although it was totally encouraging to see the Dutch vote the way they voted, and for Wilders to get about 15-16% of the total vote a couple of days ago. That's a hopeful sign. But we are as a nationalist project in Scotland. I think we are quite anomalous in the European and global context, and thank God we are.
Yeah. And I was going to actually ask you about that. Do you think Holland threw a spanner in the works, or a lot of these people are quite determined that they'll see that as they've lost a round, not the battle?
Sure, and we'll see how it works out with France, and I think there's also an Italian election to come along as well after that. These three European events were the most worrisome thing in my skyline because of my particular position, which I'm now beginning to realise is not the only position in relationship of Scotland to Europe. I mean, I'm very much a kind of EU continuity person. I'm very much Remain and Reform. I think that we have to keep some kind of semblance of EU unity, because I think the parallels with the 1930s, as Yanis Varoufakis would say, are too scary. But I have seen opening up a kind of Scotland in relationship to EFTA or in relationship to EEA, or having a relationship to Europe that's positive but doesn't necessarily involve going straight into the EU now. I would worry about that at one level, because I think the EU continuity case is so strong, it's so idealistic. I think the Eurocrats will be absolutely embracing of someone providing another positive vote for the European project. But I can understand, post-Greece, I can understand post the near adoption of TTIP, general scepticism about the performance of the European Union. So maybe what I hope that we can do over these next couple of years, and whatever independence-framed campaign we're getting involved in, is that we need to try and create a lot of confidence and competence in the citizenry amongst people in the communities and towns of Scotland, that they think an independent Scotland can handle various options. We don't just need to be thinking about plan A, we need to think about plans B, C, D and E on everything, whether it's currency or whether it's geopolitical relationships with Europe. And we need to have the confidence that we